Pop quiz. How many workplace meetings happen in the United States on an average day? What's your best guess? Meetings are one of the main ways, obviously, that we meet together in all kinds of organizations, whether it's at work, company, a nonprofit, government, or in the community, if you're an elected official, if you're in real estate, both of which I've done. Meetings are how we communicate, right? We say, let's talk. We should chat. We should meet. Let's get on a call. Let's get on a Zoom. We should get together and discuss, right? The answer is 55 million. That's the best guess that is out there for how many workplace meetings happen per day in the United States. This was pre-COVID, so maybe that number's even more now if there's more Zoom meetings, or maybe it's a little bit less, but the point is there's tens of millions of meetings that happen. My question to you is, how many of those meetings do people leave feeling heard and understood? Because most meeting methods that we have are designed around these valid goals or valid processes where, let's say in a public hearing, when I was mayor, I was running meetings about where people could give their input on what we were voting on, and everybody got 3 minutes to talk, right? Or maybe at your work or in a different setting, we just say, let's go around the table and give everyone a chance to talk, or let's be sure we hear from everyone, meaning let's give everybody a chance to say what they want. So we have public hearings in local government, Robert Rules of Order, meeting agendas, lots of meeting methods that are out there, facilitation techniques, World Cafe, all kinds of things. And they're really designed around this premise of giving people a chance to talk. Sales scripts, when I was a real estate agent for 7 years full-time, any training was all about, what are you saying to persuade or move people along in the conversation? So even at the dinner table, we might say, okay, how was your day? How was your day? How was your day? And it's just people taking turns talking. So let me go on a little rant to make clear what I think the problem with this is. This is the Franklin Covey talking stick, which you can buy for the low price of $34.99, which might seem like a lot, but if you see the claims here, you can understand why they are charging that much, because they're saying the use of this talking stick may result in amazing synergistic results. If you're catching a little sarcasm in my tone, you're accurate, because I don't think the way this is designed can actually make that happen. You see that they focus on the talking stick, this culturally appropriated talking stick, and it says only the person holding the talking stick is allowed to speak, and once that person feels understood, he or she passes the talking stick to the next person. So let's say I'm the person here with the talking stick, and it's my time to talk. And I'm with three of you, and you're not allowed to talk according to these rules, right? You're just consuming my information. So the problem here is that what I call breakthrough listening is not possible, because you are not able to provide the paraphrasing, the questioning, and the paraphrasing that is typical and that I'll get into here shortly. So what happens is that maybe I pass the talking stick without really being sure that I was fully heard or understood, but I know that my turn is over. And this other person is taking the talking stick at a maybe awkward transition, and then they feel like maybe they have to acknowledge what I said, which might impact where they start the conversation, and it can be kind of an awkward handoff. Now, this person knows that they're next, so they're thinking about what they're going to say next. And then this other person might have wanted to ask me a clarifying question or affirm what I said or something like that, but they can't do that. By the time it's time where they can do that, it's too late and the time has passed, and now they're operating on maybe confusion or ambiguity around what I said and don't really know how to react. So my point here is that taking turns talking is not the same as taking turns being fully heard and understood. So in these 55 million workplace meetings a day in the United States, and countless other just interactions that we have with each other, if we're just focused on taking turns talking, and if we're a facilitator or a manager or a leader of a team, project leader, a scrum leader, and all we're doing is letting people take turns talking, and we're not doing the corrective action of paraphrasing, clarifying questions and paraphrasing, and the other things that are common in active listening and that I teach in my breakthrough listening toolbox, we're missing the magic that happens when people do feel heard and understood. That's how people feel included. That's how trust can be built. That's how you can avoid miscommunication, correct miscommunication, have more accurate conversations, avoid wasted time, all these other things, if the listening's there. And if we're thinking about listening as making sure that everyone involved is feeling heard and understood. So the dialogue methods that were taught, the leadership examples, the sales scripts, they're mostly designed around this paradigm of as long as we give people a chance to talk, we're meeting our obligation. And I'm saying no, we are not. Because unless we are explicitly making time for the listening, we cannot assume that people are feeling heard and understood. So you might be asking, Kai, do you have a process that actually fixes this? Yes, I have a whole training on this. I call the listening that I teach breakthrough listening, and I teach individual leaders and teams and trainings. And I'm going to give you the most important pieces right now. So breakthrough listening is doing what it takes to make the speaker feel fully heard or understood, or make the speakers feel fully heard and understood. Notice this doesn't say breakthrough listening is letting everybody talk. That's not what this is about. This is we are getting together with the intent to make each other feel heard and understood. So I'm going to highlight a PQP combination, or the PQP process or framework here, which is simply paraphrase, question, paraphrase. I'll get into detail here in a minute about both of those. But basically, if I'm this person and I want to make the other person feel heard and understood, a simple way I can do that is as they speak, I can offer a paraphrase, hear their response, ask them a clarifying question, hear their response, and then offer a concluding paraphrase. It's very simple, and it might be common sense, but we know that common sense is not common practice. So let me get a little bit nerdy and specific about paraphrasing. So I have this powerful 5-part powerful paraphrase template, and all these orange parts are one of the 5 parts. I'll just go through very briefly here what those are, though I can get into more in depth about this later. But that just means start slowly, kind of have a qualifier. Okay, sounds to me like, that's what this first part is. So it's, so you feel blank about blank because blank, question mark. I intonated that it's a question, but you might also just add that. So you feel blank about blank because blank. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly? Did I hear that right? Am I interpreting that correctly? So you have these 3 blanks that start with this qualifier and then a question. The 3 blanks are emotions and feelings. So you feel blank, how do you feel about it? About the situation that was being discussed. And then you really want to try and figure out why do they feel that way about those situations and facts. So that's the paraphrase. And then the questions you want to ask should be inquisitive. They should seek clarity, satisfy curiosity, and invite continued conversation. And they should help the speaker feel fully heard and understood. So what's the safest way to do that? I label the question safe zone as those 3 blanks in the powerful paraphrase. So you want to ask your questions either about the feelings, clarifying questions about the situations or the facts or the thing that they are reacting to, or what is it that's driving those feelings about that thing. So notice these aren't questions about tangential things, or they say something like they have a dog and you say, hey, I have a dog too. And it just totally changes the direction of the conversation. Really focus on your questions in these 3 areas and you'll be able to stay on track. So let's get back to meetings though, because PQP is really just something to use in an interaction. I introduce a process. I invite you all to use it whenever you like. It's called the Listening Cafe, or the Listening Cafe meeting method. And by the end of this section, you already hopefully understand the problem with the talking stick, but I'm now going to teach you the Listening Cafe method, sort of its ideal, and then some ways that you can adapt it for different use cases. So it is all based on the PQP combo that we just went through. paraphrase, question, paraphrase. So you can use this process for situations where taking turns being fully heard and understood aligns with the goals for the conversation or the meeting, which is not all the time. I'm not saying every meeting needs to have this or that this needs to be the entirety of every meeting, but there's many opportunities where checking in with everybody, make sure that they feel heard and understood is really critical. If you're creating inclusive workplaces, if you are debating an important decision, if you're reflecting on an important decision, if you're reflecting on something that happened and you want to get people's input, this is a great method to use for all or part of a meeting. And I'll go through some other examples here in just a moment. But basically, you have a topic, a prompt, or a challenge, or a conflict that wants to be discussed. In its smallest form, you just have 2 to 4 people in the conversation. And instead of the talking object, you have a star. And I don't think I have one here next to me. But I just go to a craft store and get like a 30-cent little wooden star and have that in a conversation if we're in person. And that person... that star designates who the current star of the conversation is. It has a similar function to the talking stick or a talking object. I just like to use a star. So a listening round would be that everybody gets a chance to be the star. And this can take 10 to 20 minutes for a listening round, and you use this PQP protocol. So somebody has the star. Let's say, again, I start, and I'm sharing my input. And what's next is the next person in the circle, when I'm done initially talking, is going to paraphrase me. I'll respond. It's going to ask me a clarifying question. I'll respond. And then is going to do sort of a concluding or summary paraphrase. And I still have the star. And then the next person does that again. Paraphrases what I said. They might focus on a different aspect or angle or dimension or implication about what I said. Ask me a clarifying question. I respond to that as well. Paraphrase me again. And then that happens again, potentially, right? A paraphrase, question, paraphrase from the third person. And it's only at that point that the next person becomes the star in the conversation. I do have the slide here of safe zone question examples. So when it comes time to ask a question, you can ask these questions in these sections. So emotions, how do you feel about that? So did you feel frustrated or anxious about that? Or did you feel something else? Clarifying questions about the situation, deeper commitments and values. What's that thing driving those emotions about that situation? Sorry, that was a little bit out of place. But let's start going through some examples of the listening cafe method. So imagine, we have these 4 participants, and what's happening in an ideal round is every person has a chance to be that star, has the PQP from everybody else in the conversation, and now you can see what's happening there. Everybody has taken a turn to be fully heard and understood to the best extent possible. You could have a different prompt for the next round, or you can just keep it going. And you can see how this is very different by simply adding the PQP process. So you could maybe complete multiple listening rounds. If you had like an hour for a listening cafe, maybe you can do 3 or 4 or more. But again, this could just be one part of a longer meeting. So people have questions frequently. What if I have more than 4 people? What if I don't have time to train everybody and I have multiple rounds? How could we use this as a team to listen to many stakeholders or customers at once? So let me give you some examples. If you do have time to train everybody and you have a lot of people, you could just train everybody in your organization, in your membership group, and your team, and your department on the listening cafe. And if we're all know what's happening, we can just split into groups. And in this case, there's 4 different groups meeting, and they're all using the listening cafe. This works really well if you have time to do a quick training up front, and then everybody can just sort of be set loose in their groups to use the listening cafe. In a classroom setting, if you've had time for people to learn this, or in a workplace setting, if people have learned this in previous meetings, it's really quick to just break into groups and do a listening cafe. The other way would be if there's only one person trained in it. So let's say you're a manager, or you're a team leader, or a scrum leader, or the point is you're the only one that knows how this works. You can be the listener. So you notice in this case, this yellow person is the listener, and this person down here is the star. And rather than the yellow person becoming the next star of the conversation, the star actually goes straight across. And then in all cases, only the designated listener or the all-time listener is doing the PQP process. So this can work really well when you're trying to model the listening. If you're a leader and you want to signal that you're a listener, if you're trying to create listening culture and model it, this is a really wonderful way to do that. So you can also do that with a larger group. So let's say you're in a group of however many people this is, 12, and you don't want to split into groups, and you want to ask feedback. You could say, hey, who wants to contribute to this conversation? And maybe just anybody in the group wants to chime in, sort of popcorn style. You could then use that PQP process. Or even if you're not running the meeting, maybe you're the formal leader and you don't want to be doing this. Maybe you assign somebody else to be that all-time listener. And then if somebody else wants to chime in, you do the PQP just with that person. And in this case, everybody has the benefit of hearing folks. You get the connotation, sort of the feeling of, hey, listening is important here, but not everybody needs to chime in, and you don't have to put everybody on the spot or take time for everybody. The other option would be if you have a limited number of trained people, you train a team of people, and then the untrained attendees just get into a group with one of these trained folks. This is a method that I did with an elementary school principal who was opening up a new school. They wanted to have an open house with parents before the new school year started in a building that they had never been in, the parents had never been in. And the principal had heard me speak to their leadership team about how most of our meetings and events are all designed at talking at people. And she said, you know what? I think we're about to maybe make this mistake in this open house. We're going to invite all these parents in, and I have my agenda, and I'm just going to talk at them. But, I heard what you said, Kai. How could we make this event something where we actually let them all feel heard and understood, and we are modeling this listening culture that we'd like to create here in the school? So in that case, I trained a number of her teachers that were going to attend that event in the listening cafe, and everybody split into a small team, and they had a script. Sorry, that was a little too soon. They had a script, a set of 4 or 5 questions that the teachers with 4 or 5 parents at their small table at this event were asked, and the teachers they were the all-time listeners. They did the PQP, and they thought that went really well. So my challenge to you, the practice opportunity, is try the listening cafe. Try it out. You have nothing to lose. You can schedule it. You can add it to an existing meeting. And if you're in one of the classes, you would have this opportunity to reflect in the discussion board. But this is probably not in that format, so you can tweet at me how it went at Kai Degner. Or if you get involved in some of our challenges or trainings, or you want to be in touch, definitely tell me how it went. So hopefully we have accomplished these goals of you understand the problem with the talking stick or the talking habit, the talking culture that we have in our meetings, and understand that the listening cafe method is an opportunity for you to shift away from just taking turns talking, but rather taking turns feeling heard and understood. We went over that ideal listening cafe method where it's just maybe a group of 4 people. We also talked about some alternatives where you just have an all-time listener, and we talked about 2 ways to split up large groups, so you can have an all-time listener with a larger group, or you can train certain people to that then meet with others in small groups and be all-time listeners. And really appreciate you listening here, and I hope that you use it. Thank you for listening.